Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
Are you sexually attracted to young boys, to underage boys?
Am I sexually attracted to underage boys?
One of the things you talk about, the pedophilia in Greco-Roman society, and Mr. I told you I might botch some of these names. Johann Winkelmann.
Okay. You got a really interesting guy. His name is Jan Winkelmann.
Okay.
But that's okay. And that was very sophisticated of you to pick up on that. Very few reviewers have. And it's an interesting topic. Jan Winkelmann is considered the father of art history. He is not considered a father of race theory or even of white race theory. But his idea was that the ancient Greeks are uniquely beautiful. Are you with me, Dan?
Oh, I'm listening intently.
Okay. So the ancient Greeks were uniquely beautiful. Now, Winkelmann, this is an 18th century figure, late 18th century, and he looked for the cardinals and the popes in Rome. This is before Greece became independent, so it was difficult to actually go to Greece. So when he studied the Greek statuary, he studied Roman copies, and Roman copies were made of Carrara marble, which is white. Now, Greek marble comes in various shades, but it's often kind of brownish, and the Greeks painted their statuary. And so what became foundational in art history, and art history gives us our images of beauty, what became foundational in art history was the statuary that Winkelmann saw in Rome, which was white, hard, of ancient statuary, which is also white.
Wow. Wow. I was just talking to a friend, and he was showing photographs. He had been through Europe, and I was telling him about your book, preparing for this show. And he was looking through his photographs, and he said, I saw these pictures, and they were white statues, and they had the small boys in the statues.
Yes.
So that's what you're talking about. I didn't even put two.
There are very, very few female figures. Very, very few. Winkelmann himself was a gay man, and he lived in the Catholic world. There was all men. So even if it wasn't homoerotic, it was certainly homosocial. It was, and ancient Greece, of course, the upper reaches of the society was focused on men. So to the extent that our ideas of beauty are hard, white, and male, you can thank Jan Winkelmann.
Am I sexually attracted to underage?
Wow. I can't pronounce the names, but I can, at least read a little bit. This is page 61 from Dr. Painter's The History of White People, where she is quoting Mr. Winkelmann, and she says that Winkelmann's romantic, fervent friendships with young men brought him into contact with the pride of the human form. Winkelmann disdained art depicting women, for he considered the supreme beauty of Greek art rather male than female.
Yeah. And if you can sum up, I don't know if you ever took an art history class, but those images from ancient Greek art, they're all male.
Am I sexually attracted to underage boys?
Context of white supremacy. Gus T Renegade Justice in for another program, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the broadcast. Today's date, Friday, November 25th, 2011. What I have been told is referenced as Black Friday. racist man and racist woman. They put it all in the words. The etymology of that, I think, goes back to slavery and white people in this area of the world, the United States, saying that you are in the black, meaning that you are making a profit, you're making money through slavery, abuse of black people, and white people's dedication to that abuse of black people shining through to this day. They recognize the day after so-called Thanksgiving celebration of dominating and genocide against non-white so-called Native Americans. They follow that. Black Friday. We go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff that we do not need in preparation for their next so-called holiday. Racism, white supremacy, every day. Our program for this evening, focusing on a topic that I hope people have been paying attention to. I hope that people have been following what's been happening at Penn State, big-time university, billion-dollar fund. I mean, these folks, tons of dough. Pardon. But I hope people have been following this, because I think this is a sad illustration of where racism, white supremacy is headed. I think Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., I think he said, and Dr. Welsing talks about this all the time, he said way back in the, I believe, 60s, late 60s, early 70s, so about 50 years ago, Mr. Fuller said, racism, white supremacy, they're going to have black males in dresses. Dr. Welsing talks about this all the time. The whole scandal at Penn State, right in that vein. I actually had, I know a lot of people have been covering this. I know Cree and LBM, they did an outstanding broadcast just last week covering the topic. If folks missed it, you can check that out. Cree 7, her blog as well, Cree's blog, cree7.wordpress.com. But I know there are some non-white people who have been following this, and they have connected the dots about racism, white supremacy. I had the same thought as a listener who suggested, hey, remember when you had the guest on the program talking about the so-called Atlanta child murders and how he thought that that was a pedophilia ring that was going on in Atlanta and all the great information that he shared. Why don't you have him back on to see what he thinks about what has been going down at Penn State? And I was already there. I was like, man, I had the same idea. I decided that I was going to check it out and see if we could get him on the program. As soon as I called him and asked him about what's been going on at Penn State, he immediately said, yes, I have been following and taking notes. Real pleasure to have him back on the program. The book that he talked to us about before, that he's working on and revising, Yesterday's Shame, on the so-called Atlanta child murders. If you are not familiar with that incident, you can check the archives. He was on the program July 4th, 2010. He was on the program to check out more about that. We also have very first program with Chet Detlinger, author of The List. He too had suspicions that what was happening in Atlanta during the late 70s and early 80s was a child pedophilia ring. But please visit the archives and check out his previous visit. But our guest for today's program, working again on the book Yesterday's Shame, on the so-called Atlanta child murders and the rampant homosexual and pedophilic behavior that was taking place there. He is editing and revising that book to increase the scope, to really draw attention to the fact that this was not just something that was going on in Atlanta, that the homosexual activity, pedophilia, pornography, that this was widespread, very organized, extremely well-financed, and intricately related to the system of white supremacy. Joining us for the second time, Mr. Cisco Streetlove. Mr. Streetlove, are you with us?
I'm with you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you again for sharing your time with us. I know quite a few folks, they remembered your visit from the last program. I know it has been referenced more than once. People talking about that and how much they learned when you shared with us last time. So good to have you back on again with us, sir.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
See, I guess before we get started, is there anything you would like to share with our listeners, folks who maybe have not heard the first time that you were on the program? Is there anything you'd like to share about the research that you've been doing on the subject of, I guess, the so-called Atlanta child murders, or the research that you've done on these sex rings?
Sure. Since that time, I've uncovered new information about Atlanta, but also that the very same thing, the very same dynamics were in Oakland County, Michigan, although the kids were white and predominantly female. And there was a case in D.C. between 71 and 72 where a freeway phantom struck. And in all three cases, you had victims that were murdered in the same ways. You had serious pedophiles involved. And in all three cases, elements like green fibers, dog hairs, a killer that responds to the press are apparent. And so I'm incorporating that material with what happened in Atlanta with Eddie Long and Dragon Con, some other things that have happened in more recent times to show, as you started your show, that this is nationwide, and it involves homosexual pedophilia.
Wow. Again, I hope folks, if you're out there, I hope you have been following the ongoing tragedy, and it just gets wider and wider each day. That's been happening at Penn State, and hopefully we will share some constructive information on how this relates, in my opinion, intricately relates to the system of white supremacy. I thought a solid way to kind of begin the program, we talked about before the program, the relationship between homosexuality and pedophilia. What, I guess, if you had to explain, how would you relate homosexuality, white supremacy, and the occult? If we had to take those three concepts, how would you say that all of those concepts are related?
Sure. The occult is a dual-meaning catchphrase, especially in our society, English-speaking Western civilization, especially between here, Canada, Great Britain, where they speak English. Okay. On one hand, the occult means what is hidden. So if you are a part of a fraternal order, a sorority, and you have secret handshakes, secret symbols, rituals, that is considered the occult. But a greater meaning, the one that's most often widely used, is something that is magical, mystical, something that involves witchcraft, Satanism, alchemy, astrology, metaphysics. Well, from its very essence, white supremacy is occultism. White supremacy is the notion that because you are Caucasian and because your skin is white, that you are special among humanity. Now, a big part of white supremacy has to do with sexual magic. Sexual magic is I don't mean to be, I'm going to try and be as least graphic as possible, but oftentimes it is where they have sexual activity for the express purposes of foresight, channeling energy of a person who is on bottom holding an orgasm so that the person on top can harness that energy and look into the future. Aleister Crowley, who was one of the premier practitioners of sexual magic and an arch occultist, he allegedly used this to the hilt, and he actually worked with British intelligence during World War II. A big part of sexual magic is harnessing the energy of boys, because boys are considered to have more energy than women, and also because, as one of your guests mentioned earlier in that clip, homosexuality is a big part of white supremacy, and it has been in the days of the Greco-Roman era. And to make a long story short and be as tasteful as possible, these concepts of sexual magic have fueled the unfortunate phenomenon of child molestation and child pornography in our society, especially since the 1970s. Why the 1970s? It was because these organizations, just like Jerry Sandusky's Second Mile, they rely on transportation. They are national, if not international organizations. They distribute photographs of boys as well as boys around the country to engage in sex with men. And a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of these people use these children in sexual rituals that lead to sexual magic. But otherwise, they're just degenerate rituals that these people partake in.
I know when we were talking before the program, we talked about how a lot of times black people, we've been so traumatized by white people that we don't connect the dots. Our perception is a little lower than it should be, and myself at the top of the list. And we talked just about connecting those concepts: white supremacy, homosexuality, the occult. And in fact,
yes.
Longtime listener, Miss Zanelle, also former guest, I was speaking with her this summer, and she said that I think the occult and white supremacy, they might just be two different terms for the same thing. And I think the easiest illustration, just for listeners to be clear, the easiest illustration that I could give would be the out in the forefront, really, the Ku Klux Klan, who white people will typically point to if you want an example of racism. And you see all three of those aspects in the behavior of the Ku Klux Klan. Could you kind of touch on that just to hammer that point home?
Absolutely, sir. The Ku Klux Klan is not just a hate group. It's not just one of America's foremost infamous terrorist organizations. The Ku Klux Klan is an occult organization. Their beliefs that white skin gives them privilege over all others is indeed a belief in magic that is, of course, is insane. And they practice that to the fullest. Their whole goal, their ceremonies, their ritualistic murders are occult activities. The sexual mutilation of men, the sexual mutilation of women, the hangings by rivers, burning victims, just as the witches of Salem were burnt at the stake. Those are occult activities, and a lot of times black people, we've just been so traumatized, as you stated, that we did not realize, yes, these people are occultists, arch-occultists.
For people who might be listening in and saying, well, I don't agree. I don't think that's true. The Klan, I mean, they frequently will speak out publicly against homosexual behavior, and I don't know about the occult aspect either. I mean, they say they're Christians. They frequently are burning crosses. I guess I would point out with the occult aspect, just looking at a lot of the names, Grand Wizard and all of these names, they sound as though they're using terms that are frequently associated with the occult, witchcraft, that sort of thing. Just a lot of the rituals that they participate in. And I think they would certainly, I think you could easily make a case that these are sacrifices, blood rituals.
Yes, they are.
And
they are.
The castration as well, I was just going to throw that in for the homosexual aspect. Frequently, the castration of black males, and I think I said this consistently, I view lynchings, that is some sort of sexual orgy. I think white people get a lot of sexual gratification out of that process. There's a lot of evidence of them castrating black males, cutting out the vagina of black females, breasts of black females, and keeping those appendages, believing that there's some sort of magic power invested in them. I believe we read a passage on the program, Red Summer, where it was a white man had cut off the fingers of a black male, and he was so proud. He had it on display in his store and was inviting people to come by. To me, particularly when you're talking about removing sex organs, males removing another male's sex organs, that very much in the realm of sexual deviance, some sort of sexual orgy, and I would say very much related to homosexual activity. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
No, you're exactly right, and it goes into the very reality that homosexuals, especially in this nation, are dedicated to white supremacy. As white males, they're saying to black people that they love white men and their white skin so much that they're not letting that go. And because they themselves are white males, it is in their vested interest that white supremacy, as by way of occult practices, be maintained as the dominant form of control. Because when you're talking about white supremacy, that trumps politics, it trumps religion, it trumps business. It is the entire, complete, absolute agenda as an occult practice, an occult belief of maintaining dominance in a given civilization.
Context of... Oh, I'm sorry. Please continue.
Oh, no, I apologize. I was just going to give an example that, yes, the Ku Klux Klan, they are a cult, and many of the members, if not most of the members, they are homosexual. That's why wherever the Ku Klux Klan have gone, there have been very prominent serial killers. Just for example, in Atlanta, many of the serial killers were white supremacists, and of course, those that murdered a lot of black people, they were serial killers, and many of them are homosexual. That's why, to this day, Atlanta is a major hub for homosexuality in America. 35 to 40% of the population between Atlanta's home of Fulton County. Atlanta is primarily 95% Fulton County. 5% of it is in DeKalb County, basically. But between East Atlanta and DeKalb County, 35 to 40% of the entire population is gay. And in America, I'm sorry, but in all honesty, the gay populace is advocating and practicing white supremacy.
Definitely agree. My princess boy, all of that is not harmless, incorrect behavior, in my opinion. It is lethal. And again, just mention the same film I mentioned yesterday, The Strangeness of the Johnsons. All of this very purposeful. As I said on my Facebook post, the art of war. This is how you normalize destructive behavior. This behavior, as you heard in the sound clip from Dr. Nell Irvin Painter, this is the history of white people. Pedophilia, homosexuality, these sex rituals, white supremacy, that is the history of white people. And it's just about, honestly evaluating what happens so we get a better understanding of the world around us, and hopefully to motivate us to get on that job to replace white supremacy with justice. With what happened at Penn State, with your knowledge, doing the research on the Atlanta child murders and the other pedophile rings that you've been studying, when everything first broke out, became major media news with Jerry Sandusky and what happened at Penn State, you said your initial response was laughter. Why was
I
that?
laughed. I laughed. It wasn't because, you know, I think it's funny. It's because I really wasn't surprised. And by that Wednesday, when Joe Paterno's legacy, not just his career, but his very legacy was ended, it was very clear that the situation is worse than what they're revealing to the public, and that sex ring was in operation for a lot longer than they want to divulge to the public.
I guess just if you could share why you think the sex ring, and you said sex ring, you're not talking about this as though this was just Jerry Sandusky's dementia, that this was
right.
A group sex ring for molesting, it appears, young boys. Why do you think this has been? Why do you think this is larger than what's being reported?
Sure. In 1977, a nationally operated sex ring was broken by the federal authorities. One of the key suspects in the ring was a man, a multimillionaire named Francis Sheldon. He was an Ann Arbor, Michigan resident. He basically, he was a pilot, and what he was doing was flying boys back and forth from their neighborhoods to his retreat for sexual purposes on North Fox Island in Michigan. It's like off the east coast of Michigan in one of the Great Lakes. Sheldon and some other people fled the country before, like the ring. They got word that the ring was being investigated in 76. By 77, they fled. Sheldon, he first went to the islands, but he mainly settled in Europe, and he basically died a fugitive from justice in 96. And the ring that he was a part of, it had operations in New Jersey, Louisiana, and I believe it was Florida and Tennessee. Another associate of his was operating the New Jersey branch. It was this guy named Malcolm McConaughey, who legally changed his name in 1976 to Adam Starchild. Starchild is a major child pornographer. He's a major pedophile. He had been arrested all the way back in 1968 for basically sexual perversion involving a 16-year-old boy. And even after his association with Francis Sheldon, he was arrested for child pornography charges. He spent several years in jail in the 1980s, and he too has been all around the world. He's a writer, and one of the things that he does is he handles money, and he's a serial pedophile, and he is a very wealthy man, and this is the lifestyle that they live. A lot of people assume that these sex rings are local and they're these quirky, sadistic people from the middle class. But no, these are rich people that are well off, that they have these sadistic proclivities. They are attracted to boys at all costs. And by the 1960s, 1970s, they orchestrated a national sex ring, and they would utilize their wealth to finance their proclivities. They would pass around photographs of boys. Then they would fly in or drive in the boys out of certain cities into other states. And this ring, this national operation, it was big money. And these people are perverts at heart.
Context of white supremacy. I definitely want people to keep that in mind. You can do research. They had major Senate committees talking about the widespread, well-financed pornography and pedophilia rings that began just exploding in the 1970s, and a lot of this on the back of so-called gay rights. If you do the research, a whole lot of this was tied in together. But just keeping in mind, not only the late 70s did you have the Atlanta child murders, so-called Atlanta child murders began, but just before that, we touched on this before, Cabbagetown in Atlanta, child pedophile ring that got busted in Atlanta, and this was just before everything began, publicly anyway, with the so-called child murders case. And also, tied to Penn State, the Second Mile Charity Foundation, founded in 1977. So right,
yep.
Same time period, just to kind of give some additional context. I know specifically with Penn State, major football university, Jerry Sandusky, former assistant coach, football coach at Penn State, Dr. Wellesley yesterday, I thought she laid out eloquently the fact that there's a lot of sexual symbolism around football anyway. That's, right in her book, The ISIS Papers, where she talks about the big brown ball and controlling the big brown ball, and the object is to get it through the white uprights, which represent the white woman, sexual intercourse with the white woman. I ring my cowbell. And you talked about how, hey, this should not be a surprise to anyone who looks at football as being, this is supposed to be the super macho sport, aggression, going out and hitting someone as violently as you can, and getting the girl. They have the cheerleaders, half-clad, mostly white cheerleaders around the field, that one should not be surprised that you see what looks like a ring, a well-organized group of white men taking advantage of black males, it looks like, in this football atmosphere. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit?
Sure. While at the same time, the public at large and a lot of black people, they enjoy football, and they're, a lot of black people, they enjoy seeing the black athletes. And at the same time that these white guys are like, oh, you're so big and strong, I'd love to see you on the field, son, they're doing illegal sexual activity with the underage black kids. And it's one of those things where, yes, homosexuality, pedophilia, they're the hallmarks of white supremacy, which is an occult practice that expressly believes in the awesomeness of being white, and that you can do whatever you want on this realm, especially to those who are non-white, primarily black Americans.
I just hearing this, I'm curious. I'm going to see if I can give Anthony Pryor a ring as well. He played professional football and collegiate football, and he talked about how easy and really how fun it was for many of these white coaches who he said they were racist, and they just enjoy dominating and having power and control over black males that they are coaching, and just thinking this has got to be heaven if you are a white male and you enjoy pedophilia, you enjoy practicing racism. If you're a coach in this environment, it seems like you would be able to just have your way. You've got a whole army of young males to choose from. If you do any recruiting, you get to go out and talk to high school age. They're even younger. Young boys who, their whole future, all of their hopes and dreams, they're investing in these white coaches. You have got some folks who probably are going to be pretty docile, pretty easy to control. It would, I would seem, just be the ultimate way to satisfy your fetish if you are a racist. Oh, go ahead. Go right ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to add one of all the people, all the things to name a team, you definitely don't want to name them after Spartans. The Spartans, they weren't just any Greek city-state civilization. The Spartans were known to rape their opponents on the field. They were known to actually kill each other for the affections of fellow warriors. That's why, centuries, eons ago, if other armies saw the Spartans, it was terminate them with extreme prejudice. These guys, they're perverts, they're deviants. If you see them, you kill them. And yes, when it comes to white supremacy, the sexual dominance of black males is a preemptive, or I should say a primary objective. It is in their vested interest to make sure that black males are docile, emasculated, neutered, so that white supremacy can continue as far as they're concerned as normal. Because again, in reality, white supremacy is not normal. It's an insane logic. These people are insane. When you're talking about white people, especially blonde-haired, blue-eyed individuals, these are exotic people who play reverse logic, play Jedi mind tricks on the masses of Earth, and in reality, they're the minority. They're the ones that are exotic, but they portray everyone else, especially black people, as exotic.
Wow, I just wanted to make sure that point wasn't lost. I thought that was real important. All the way back to the sound clip where Dr. Nell Irvin Painter, again, this is just the history of white people. You should not be surprised, stunned by what happened at Penn State. This is how white people get down. This is how they've always gotten down. And I was reminded, you said you would not want to name any institution, if it's something that you're proud of and you want other people to emulate, you wouldn't want to name that after something connected to Sparta. These people are savages on the things that they do. I think if you look at white people's colleges and universities, man, it is like worship to Greco-Roman society. If you know anything about that, you would have to think, wow, there's probably quite a bit of homosexual activity going on here. And I guess just for listeners, again, a little extra context. Joe Paterno, the coach at Penn State, former coach at Penn State, who was fired when all of this kicked off. Penn State is a part of the Big Ten. That's one of the college football leagues or college sports leagues, the Big Ten. Also in the Big Ten is Indiana University. Dr. Alfred Kinsey did all of his pioneering research studying the orgasms of infants, babies, being in touch with pedophiles, rapists, to collect all this data that he thought was so wonderful, studied at Indiana University, also in the Big Ten. Just the connections, incredible. And his research still goes on. Indiana University, they defend it. They have not, called out anyone to say, oh, this is terrible. We shouldn't have endorsed this. We made a mistake. It continues to this day, unabated. Just making that connection, Big Ten and the worship of this sort of behavior. It's the history of white people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, just to tie that home. Okay, when you said when keeping the audience of the rest of my book. I'm adding in the case what happened in Oakland County, Michigan. It's the exact same dynamics as what happened in Atlanta. As a matter of fact, one of the things that you always hear about in Atlanta is that, oh, these were poor children from broken homes, and they were black women that were running these families, and they were in the ghettos, and it was absolute irresponsible parenting, and that's what you have when you have black people. Well, guess what? The same thing happened to several white kids in Oakland County, Michigan, just on the side of Detroit. It's one of the main suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. There were 4 confirmed, overall 7 minors that were murdered in Oakland County, Michigan. Of them all, especially the 5 that were linked to the serial killers, only one of them came from a 2-parent household. All the other ones, they came from divorcees. They lived with their mother, the boy and the girls. And so going into white supremacy, their whole goal, even in the midst of one of the worst tragedies of having your child being killed, white people can't help but blame black people, portray black people as irresponsible, just absolutely subhuman, savage behavior, neglectful, whereas in reality, the exact same thing happened to white kids a few years prior. The prime suspect in the Oakland County child killings that authorities refused to apparently arrest was a 24-year-old named Christopher Bush. At the time of the murders, he was like 24, 25. 2 years later, he committed suicide. He was a principal photographer in the exact same sex ring that Francis Sheldon ran throughout Michigan. Several of these guys, and when you're talking about Michigan, you're talking about blue collar, the works when it comes to men. Several of these guys were pedophiles. They were running through their own kids, their own little white kids, sexually molesting them on the regular. And in the case of the Oakland County murders, they killed their own kind. The authorities, especially the FBI, knew what was going on in Oakland County, and it's really a waste that they made fun of and basically threw black people into a panic when all along they had to have known. You read it yourself, sir. They had to have known that this was some serious pedophiles, and this case is very similar to what happened in Michigan.
Context of white supremacy. Again, our guest, Mr. Cisco Streetlove. Before, I wanted to make sure to kind of connect the dots for listeners. Again, this is the history of white people. This is not anomalous. This is a well-financed organization, white supremacy, and they apply the same principles to their sexually deviant pedophile rings. Very well-financed, very codified organizations. But I just wanted to touch on, because I think this is really important, Dr. Welsing, and I think a few other folks have touched on the fact that in media reports, they really have not been very open about the racial classification of the victims. I've seen a few reports where they have asserted that it seems like Sandusky, he had a fetish for younger black males, and that a significant number of the victims were black males, but I have not seen most of the reports, they gloss over that information completely. You said you did see more recently an article that was specifying that, yes, the victims, a significant number of them were black males. I just wanted to touch on that point really quick.
Yes, the article, there were several articles especially emanating from the Northeast, around Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, that have confirmed that victim number 1, I believe it is, was black, and the primary victims that Sandusky victimized, assaulted, they were black boys. And the mother, I believe it was prominent, if you really look clearly, yeah, it's a black woman behind the shadows. So, yes, they prey on black kids because what it boils down to is, as part of white supremacy, you can do whatever you want to whoever you want, so long as they're beneath you. Now, if you look at a number of the photographs in Second Mile, what they have revealed is Second Mile, it was a charity organization that catered to underprivileged minority youth. Several of the kids pictured with Jerry Sandusky are black. And it just falls right in line with what was done with Francis Sheldon's ring. He ran a charity. Him, Adam Starchild, a man named Dyer Grossman, and some others, they ran retreats, homes for underprivileged kids, often minority kids. This is not just, it seems to be a pattern. No, this is the MO of arch white supremacists. One of the things with the occult and the belief in white supremacy is that there is a element of divinity in homosexuality. There is divinity in merging males with females. And by being a being absolved of sexual identity, that gets you closer to God. And so homosexuality, in its essence, is practiced as a big part of white supremacy.
Wow. I just, for folks, again, if you haven't been following this case, before we try to connect the dots and bring in some of the other incidents where this sort of thing has happened, just at Penn State, two things I want to point out, and then I'll get your comments on both of these. The more evidence, as each day goes on, more and more evidence. The most recent report that I've seen, all of the judges in the county where this is going to be tried in Pennsylvania, all of the judges on this case for Mr. Jerry Sandusky have excused themselves, meaning that they all felt either a conflict of personal interest or for whatever reason they could not be a judge on the Sandusky case. Now, that's in addition to the female judge who provided Jerry Sandusky with his unsecured $100,000 bond, where he's allowed to be out roaming freely right now, that she invested in the Second Mile charity, not only financially invested, but also invested apparently some time. She donated some hours of her time as well, just to give a further picture of how widespread this is. I mean, you already have the information about Joe Paterno being fired. He was told about this behavior and didn't do anything or didn't do enough. The former president at Penn State, Mr. Spanier, already gone. Senior vice president has been indicted with perjury to the grand jury. I mean, the ripples just keep going. And with regards to how many people seem to know about this, very powerful people at Penn State and even beyond, seeming to be judges, seeming to be informed and or involved in some way, just I think speaks to what you're saying about not only this being a pedophile ring, but a pedophile ring of very powerful white people, very well organized, very well financed. Can you kind of talk about that, and again, how this is a pattern with these organizations?
Sure. Just at State University alone, the county that it's in, one of the original prosecutors, Ray Griecar, who was investigating the case, he's gone. He's missing. He's declared dead. He allegedly left his girlfriend's home, and he has never shown his face in society since 2006. They found his car, they found a computer, but the hard drive was either missing or outright ruined. When you're talking about these sex rings, these are organizations that appeal to the elite of white society. That's like in Oakland County, Michigan, Christopher Bush. He was a serial pedophile. The authorities kept a lid on it. And one of the things that Bush would do, his mother was going around Oakland County giving money to the boys, hush money. I know my son is sick, but look, just keep this money and we'll keep it a secret between ourselves, okay? Christopher Bush's father was an account executive for General Motors. Francis Sheldon wasn't just any millionaire, multimillionaire. His father basically helped finance Henry Ford, and his father was basically the founder of Ford Financial, which would help people get the money to get cars. We're dealing with very prominent people. That's like in Penn State. Sandusky, he is just like in Atlanta. He not only slept with the kids, the boys, he sexually molested them, he was also exploiting them by farming them out to other insiders. These are not extraordinary occurrences. When you're talking about child pornography and sexual trafficking, it's the normal when you're talking about white supremacy.
I hope people got that. I hope people understand that clearly. This sex trafficking, the sexual domination of black people, normal. That is the history of white people to be expected as long as their system is in existence. Let me give out the number really quick. Folks want to call in. They have questions, 760-569-7676. And the code is 564-943-pound. Give it out one more time. 760-569-7676. And the code is 564-943-pound. See, we got one hand up already. I'll get you 1 second. I get just also Ray Gricard. He, this case, again, for folks, if you have not been following this case, Ray Gricard, the former district attorney in Pennsylvania, in the county where this case is going to be tried, Jerry Sandusky, an investigation had taken place in 1998, and the district attorney at that time, Ray Gricard, decided not to prosecute. This was 1998, decided not going to prosecute for whatever reason. I believe 7 years later, 2005, he goes missing. As you said, laptop dumped in the river, no hard drive, no evidence, no body. He was just declared dead legally this year, but they never found a body, never found any evidence of foul play or struggle. I mean, this is white people able to punch a button, as they say in The Godfather, and have you disappear. And I think that's also a pattern if you look at some of these cases where folks who are investigating or trying to do something about this, sometimes they end up disappearing and no trace, no evidence. Just also with the Penn State case, I think it's real important. These students, they rioted, I guess, the day that Joe Paterno was fired. Massive riot on the campus. Students are flipping over vehicles and jumping up and down. We want our coach back. We want Joe Pa back. In my opinion, that reveals a ton about the psyche of white people, and especially young white people. I hear a lot of folks, white and non-white, who will talk about young white people, and this is the hope. This is the generation of white people. They don't want to be racist anymore, and they're turning over a new leaf. If it's true that a significant chunk, or maybe even all, of Jerry Sandusky's victims are black, and they knew this, and you got, I mean, it was an army of white people out causing destruction, tipping over stuff, breaking windows in the streets. If all of this was, we don't care about these raped black children, we don't care, who cares? You're supposed to do that. We want our coach back. How dare you fire our coach over some black people getting raped? I mean, who cares? Get our coach back in here. Just if you can comment on what that scene meant to you.
We're in trouble as a civilization, but for real, it's they've plagued us for the longest. But when I juxtapose that with the black people and a lot of the civilly minded citizenry were marching in unison against the child murders in Atlanta. And you had a lot of marchers that were protesting, and they had their babies in tow. A lot of them were single mothers. They were concerned about children. They were black people. And when you see the wonderful, caring humanity that a lot of the black people exercised basically 30 years ago, and these are the people that they always portray as being stupid, uneducated. These are primitive people. When you see black people who were caring about children being killed, and then you see these young white and Asian college students protesting, rioting, turning over a news truck just because the coach who was protecting a pedophile got fired. No, it does not look good. It's very embarrassing of white people, and it's embarrassing as an American citizen to see people act that way.
Trifling, terroristic, tacky,
yes,
and trashy. White people, yep, through and through. That is the history of white people. I'm just going to keep promoting Dr. Painter's book because she lays it out clean, the whole nine. I will double check, see if you have at least one person who had a hand up for a question or a comment. Again, the number, if you want to dial in, is 760-569-7676. And the code is 564-943-pound. Person who dialed in, Atlanta area code, how interesting. Person who dialed in, 9121. Did you have a question or comment?
Hey, Gus, and to the guest, good to hear from you. This is Black.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering if you can speak. I'm going to tell you, my stomach is in here, and I mean my stomach is turning, sitting here, trying to understand this. And I guess it ain't for me to understand because my skin is not the right color, I guess. But anyway, I'd like you to speak to what's going on in the Catholic Church and how far back go back. That has got to be the most disgusting organization that's walking around this planet. And I was wondering if you can just go ahead and give us some insight into the Catholic Church.
Sure. It's white supremacy. What? Okay, sir. Even though me and you, we look at religion, okay, and people are spiritual and you respect people's spirituality. When you're a white supremacist, that is your religion. That's your agenda. Religious organizations, political organizations, business enterprises, those are merely tentacles to your white supremacist thoughts and actions. Now, when it comes to white supremacy and occultism, a big part of occultism is pedophilia, men engaging in sex with boys. beyond the divinity that they perceive with a bisexual entity. A big part of the pedophilia goes into sexual magic, channeling the sexual orgasm of the one at the bottom, and harnessing that for foresight, for basically visions into the future. This activity was touched on in the science fiction movie Minority Report. The relationship with the significantly older man and the younger male was a part of Star Wars. Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's patterned after Aleister Crowley. When you hear about the Jedi who are basically like the Knights Templar, and you hear about use the Force, Luke, use the Force, that is akin to Aleister Crowley's will, the will, or Telema. And sexual magic was used as an occult practice to manipulate people. It is the same principle that if you've ever heard on Art Bell's Coast to Coast show, Ed Dames talk about with remote viewing. Yes. This is what I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yes, sir.
Okay, they actually conducted tests like that in the 1970s and around the Vietnam War with remote viewing that all goes into sexual magic.
Mm-hmm.
They're fixated on manipulating reality to their angle. And so whatever angle that they can get over on black people especially, that's a prime goal of white supremacy, to always stay ahead. The game is already rigged, and we need that extra punch to just like really drive it into the darkies, just so that we can be supreme. And that's where a lot of the pedophilia comes in. That's where a lot of the ritualistic killings come in. But yes, pedophilia, child molestation, it's a great part of white supremacist practices.
If I can I ask you just one more thing?
Sure.
I was just talking to Gus about the other day about Aleister Crowley and all his craziness, but also another person that ran around with that crowd was L. Ron Hubbard, the one who started Scientology. And I was curious to know, what has Scientology got to do with that, and why does Scientology always go for the cream of the crop in the country? Is it to spread that agenda and make it okay? Because it seems like Hollywood is, that's what they do. They make that stuff okay to us. Or
yeah.
To people.
L. Ron Hubbard, he took part in what was considered the Babylon working. It was a sexual ritual.
Mm-hmm.
It was chronicled in this book by Peter Moon and Preston Nichols called the Black Sun. It was I believe it was a 4-part. It was a series of books.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, they utilize sexual magic, sexual rituals to boost their egos and to dominate other people. And yes, Scientology is vested in white supremacy.
Also, because you just made me think of something just now. Also running around with that. It was, matter of fact, that whole crowd was just a who's who of the '60s and that carrying on, except for Aleister Crowley. But also Charles Manson ran around with that crew also, and which leads me into CIA and FBI involvement in it. Do you know of any connection between the CIA, FBI, and child pornography rings?
Yeah, I do.
No, that's kind of touchy. I know that's kind of touchy.
No. It's not touchy as it is. It's, even though I've studied this stuff, sir, it's unnerving and it's grotesque. Okay, I laughed with Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky, but really it's grotesque, and I understand why people don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Okay.
When you look at a lot of, basically, when you look at this ring, it's a ring. We can't say anymore that, oh, these rings. No, it's one singular ring.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at this enterprise, the CIA has been knee-deep in this for decades. Yes.
Right.
Now, when you're talking about, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just trying to say his name quietly, J. Edgar Hoover. That's all.
We call him Gay over here.
Yeah. No, for real, the CIA and the FBI, yes, they've been involved in this sex ring for decades. Now, when you're talking about Charles Manson, yes, he's a vehement racist, and those murders, that was a drug deal gone bad. Here we go again with seeing and perceiving.
Right.
Abigail Folger and a number of those victims, they were in drugs. It was a drug deal gone bad, and what it looks like is Manson was the mad dog that they were sick on people. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Look at that case very, very closely. Why would you murder such prominent people? If the Manson family, if they really believed in Helter Skelter,
mm-hmm.
if they really believed in, oh, we're going to start this race war, they could have picked on any white people. Especially that time in that place in L.A., there were several white people that you could have had your pick of the litter and less prominent just kill them, and hey, it would have got the cops out and running. But no, they're keeping quiet that, yeah, it was a drug deal gone bad.
So tell me this,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not going to keep all your time. I just want to just one last thing here. Do you? For me, I think that these people that run around and do these type of things with children, especially, it's my thinking that they know something. They know something in the grand scheme of things that we don't know. As Aleister Crowley used to say, "Do what thou wilt." To me, that says what you have is right here and now, and it's nothing else. So you might as well go ahead and enjoy whatever it is or whatever you want to do. Do it here right now. Get all your magic, get all your heaven or whatever it is you're looking for. Do it now, because it ain't nothing else after this. How do you feel about that?
I respectfully, no, I understand what you're saying, but respectfully, no, I disagree. These are just evil people,
mm-hmm.
and they're selfish. They're selfish, sadistic, and they have an urge that they cannot control. That's like, just as an example, what I was talking to Gus about earlier. You have DragonCon. I'm sure you being from Atlanta, sir, you're familiar with DragonCon, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, yeah.
Okay, one of the co-founders of DragonCon is a man named Eric Kramer. He was a prominent editor of many of the most famous sci-fi books. He was a video game maker, computer game maker to be exact. He is a serial pedophile, molesting several boys. He molested several boys in the 90s back in Gwinnett County. I don't know how he got out of jail, but he got out of jail. DragonCon has divorced itself of Ed Kramer, even though he still gets a percentage of the convention money. He was in Connecticut. He was expressly told, have no contact with anyone under the age of 16, 17. Couldn't help himself. He's in jail now because he molested a 14-year-old.
Yeah,
we're talking
he's
about
right now.
Huh?
I just ready to say he's locked.
I'm sorry, what was that? He's in jail, yes, but they're trying to extradite him to Atlanta so he could face more charges and be in actual prison as compared to, a detention center. When you're talking about these people, sir, they're nihilistic to a fault. There is an afterlife, okay? It may not be what we think it is. But whether it is or not, that doesn't give you the right to harm children. That doesn't give you the right to kill, murder. You do not have the right to be evil. These people are evil. They're nihilistic. They prey on the innocent because it's who they are and what they do. White supremacy, in its right nature, is practicing evil. White supremacy is a form of evil. How else can you look at it? So these people that, they say, oh, there's nothing else for you. No. They're just saying that to terrorize the victims. But the CIA, more so than the FBI, has been a part of this sex ring for decades.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Hey, Gus.
Yes, sir.
Can I just throw one more thing in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me, what do you think? For me, for those rings to get busted like they do, because it goes real deep. It's really powerful people that play around in those things. What do you think happened at Penn State? What do you think Sandusky did to somebody for them to throw the towel in on him? Was it to minimize the damage, or was it because he stepped out of bounds, or what do you think it was?
It is to minimize the damage because basically the school, you're looking at a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, and by the time, it's the potential that the NCAA may inflict the death penalty on Penn State, and that football program is all to that school. You're not talking about a school that's even 40 minutes from, say, Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. It's in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
State College, State University, Pennsylvania, is that whole institution is the lifeblood of that municipality. And so, in addition to that, there are some white people who, they may not be complete pedophiles.
Mm-hmm.
And
how do you
one of the things with white supremacy, one of the things with white supremacy is that one of the great saviors of us is them, in the point that they're so egomaniacal, they fight among themselves. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So at certain times, they'll turn on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not always on the same accord. Because they're, like I said, you're dealing with egomaniacs. And so a lot of the people that hated Paterno, this was all they needed, and yeah, he had to go.
So he was giving up. He was sacrificial lamb for the cause to keep it going.
Yeah. Yes. And it's one of those things where, again, like Gus said, like Dr. Welsing said, when you're talking about football, okay, you're talking about the ultimate in male sports. It's a alpha male activity. Even, baseball has softball. You have some women that play basketball. But you do not see, it's not normal for a woman to play football unless it's the lingerie football league to that amount.
Mm.
Football is the ultimate bastion of masculinity in our society, civilization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the rubber meets the road when you have a pedophile as part of a prestigious football program. We're not talking about an actor, a singer, some sort of entertainer. We're not talking about a businessman, a politician. We're talking about basically basically icons, both Jerry Sandusky and Joe Paterno in American football. And the information, again, the information that they knew about Sandusky, it went way back. That's why he retired early. You know yourself, sir. A lot of these coaches, they'll hang on into their 70s. And Jerry Sandusky is like a lot of people are saying, and it's true. Why did he never pursue jobs at other colleges? Because Joe Paterno and Penn State, they knew that, look, you don't want this guy anywhere near your program. Here's why. We're keeping this hush-hush, okay? But unfortunately, it happens all too often, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, white supremacists, they fight amongst themselves. They're at war with each other for dominance. But yes, this thing, they knew about it years ago. That's like Joe Paterno. He sold his house to his wife. He put it in her name for like $1.
Yeah.
He knew trouble was coming.
Yep. And I think that's criminal within itself.
Yes, it is. But, when it comes to black kids,
yeah,
under the aegis of white supremacy, you're supposed to be excused.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. This is just one more thing. I want to add real quick. Did you know? Have you ever seen Eyes Wide Shut and the story behind that whole thing?
Yes.
Do you think that Kubrick was murdered because he let the cat out of the bag for that?
It's possible, because the last time I heard, because I wasn't really that much of a fan of Stanley Kubrick, but the last time I heard, did he officially die of cancer?
Yeah, but
right,
it was cancer.
But these sex rings, they go on. They've been going on for centuries, and Eyes Wide Shut. That's actually really truly tame, because the real sex rings, they're homosexual.
Right.
If you really read between the lines with Eyes Wide Shut, first of all, the book was written at the turn of the century, like in the late 1890s, early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these sex rings started, they were homosexual social clubs, okay? You have to ask, just common sense. If you're rich, well-to-do men, why do you need a covert social circle to get with women?
Right.
A lot of the original secret societies of that nature, they were established for homosexual practices.
Okay. But that goes back to the bathhouses of all the ancient societies, doesn't it?
Yes, the bathhouses of ancient societies and the bathhouses of America. That was another big problem in Atlanta. That was a big problem that emerged in the trial of Clay Shaw with JFK. They caught the judge in a compromising position with a young man.
Yeah,
so, yes, the bathhouses, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna let someone else get a turn. I really appreciate it.
You've got it, sir.
Always good to hear from you, Blacker. Previous guest on the program, lots of previous guests contributing. And Drop Squad member, investor, member of Drop Squad. You can check them out. Outstanding blog site. Lots of information on racism. I see someone else with a hand up, so I'll get their hand and then we'll come back because I want to connect to Blacker and his question about the involvement of FBI, CIA. The person who dialed in from Massachusetts, if you had a question, person who dialed in from Massachusetts on the TalkShoe line, if you had a question, your line should be open.
Peace, guys. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question, but before that, I want to say something. In my mid-teens, I witnessed indirectly witnessed the acts of suspected white supremacists, pedophilia. I also want to say now that, I got some time off of work, I'm having a chance to enjoy the shows live. Good show, man. Peace to your guests. First I'm going to say what I experienced, like, not personally, but in my mid-teens, right, that was when I was living in D.C., I used to hang out with this crowd of other teens, right, and, I hung out with them for a little while, and then we used to be in the park, and then all of a sudden they used to take off and be like, man, we need some money. Let's go hit C.O.W.S. C.O.W.S was the man's name, right? He used to work in a small motel in D.C. I forgot the name of the motel, but they used to go like, yeah, let's go hit C.O.W.S. And I'm like, who's C.O.W.S, man? I used to know they used to come back with money. They're like, yeah, how much you gave you? 20? Gave me 25. And then they be talking like, yeah, man, you got to really go in there and, act like you mean it. And I'm like, what? And then, I heard that. And after a while, I'm like, man, who the hell is C.O.W.S? And where y'all getting this money from, man? And they like, and then one of them, he finally told me, he said, man, this is what happened. I forgot who was it, but someone in the group had found these pictures of this white man having sex with Asian kids, because I don't know, I remember back in the 80s, right, the group that they had targeted as far as adopting a lot of Asian kids. That was big back in the 80s, in the mid-80s, right? So they found these pictures of him having sex with these kids. So I didn't see the pictures, but they told me, they like, yeah, that's how we get money from him. We just go in there and tell him, give him some money, because he knows that we know about the secret. So I was like, for real. And they like, yeah, you want some money? Go in there and try it. So I'm like, nah, this ain't real. So I went in the motel, and I said, I didn't even know the man. I never seen him, So I was like, hey, C.O.W.S, I need $20, man. You know what I'm here for. And I just went in there like that. He didn't give me 20. He gave me 10, right? But they said it was because they had found pictures of him having sex with, so-called Asian kids. Because, as y'all remember, today the main target is black kids throughout the world. But back in the 80s, it was Asian kids that they were adopting. You could see these white folks walking with 2, 3, 4 of them Asian kids. And I think whatever was going on, it was probably going on in that hotel, because, which better way to have have sex with those kids, but get some of those white parents that adopted Asian kids and take them into the hotel, look like, they're on vacation or whatever, and go in there and do their thing. Now, the question that I had was, what do you think, how destructive is this, that the focus of suspected white supremacists in this adoption thing seems to be adopting very dark-skinned, so-called black kids, not only from here in the States, but all over the world. And also, to me, it looks like they found a window to practice slavery all over again, because, you can go in, you don't have to go to an auction where they selling slaves. You just have to go through the adoption agency and go find your slave. You raise him since he's a child to be a slave. You know what I mean? What do you think about that, the adoption thing? And I'm out.
Oh no! Hey, thank you for your call. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak for Gus, but no, you just confirmed what I've said all along, and the fact that he ran a hotel or motel, hey, that sealed it. I believe you, and yes, that happens. You wouldn't believe how frequently that occurs. It's at the point now I accept it as a normalcy when it comes to white people, and yes, adoptions are used as a tool of getting kids, especially boys, for sexual purposes, because they're white supremacists and it's what they do. These people believe in sex as domination, as a ritual. It's a ritual. Sex for white people is a ritual. It's not really about romance. And when it comes to black people and, like you said, non-white people, it is a ritual. It is a ritual of domination. They don't care about what's right and what's fair. They want to be catered to because they're white. And as far as they're concerned, that ritual, that domination, that is a part and parcel of their being as a white man.
Right. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, to the brother. Yeah, I wanted to know what he thinks about, with this adoption thing, white folks adopting, so-called. Basically, it's like they targeting, in this adoption thing that is going on all over the place. They are targeting black kids from here in the United States and also in Africa, wherever they can find them. They are like obsessed with the adoption of so-called black children today. And, I'm thinking like, they found a window now to practice slavery, freely because, instead of you going and having to buy a slave, you can adopt one now. And, as far as like, they can't even use that to get their sex slaves or whatever kind of slaves they want, and they can do it legally. What do you think about that? And I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. It's like I said, it's a way for them to manipulate people. If eight times out of 10, it's a good chance that those kids, they're being victimized by some white male. And yes, white women, they play a part of it. And yeah, if a white person adopts a non-white person, that adoption should be scrutinized. But yes, you're right. Yes, it is a way for them to practice white supremacy, adopting non-white children and rearing them to, even from the standpoint of being more hospitable to white people, because, see, I'm white and I love you and I treat you just fine. My other people like me, we're not all bad. Yes, there is an ulterior motive to them adopting these children.
Wow. Blindside. It is black people getting blindsided, not understanding what is happening on a planet dominated by racism, white supremacy. Thank you to the folks that called in. If you all have other questions, you can press, if you're on the free HD line, press *6 if you have a question. And if you're on the TalkShoe line, it's *8. I'll give out the number again, but if you have questions, if you're on the free HD line, *6. TalkShoe line, it's *8. I want to make sure to get the FBI CIA connection, but I just wanted to share a story. Actually, I'll share a story. Someone put a hand up. I'll get their question and then do the FBI CIA link. The thing I wanted to share to get your thoughts, Mr. Streetlove, 909, regular caller, investor here at the program. He said he was listening to a radio program over this past weekend, and it was a black radio program. He said I could hear he would fuss because it was on the internet. It wasn't a radio program, so he was listening to internet talk program and black host, and they were talking about what's going down at Penn State. And he said that it was maybe, let's say, 30 people in the chat room. And he said all of a sudden, he was listening live, all of a sudden it started going up and up and up. It went 30, 40, 50, 80, 100, just going up and up and up. And he said it was a wave, an orchestrated wave of white people calling in, and they were in opposition to the black host. And they were saying, I'm paraphrasing, but he said that they were calling in and saying, it serves you right. You deserve what you get. Serves you right. That's what's supposed to happen to black people. Stop fussing, at the people at Penn State. Just total call to disrupt their program, which was focused on what happened at Penn State. And he said it seemed like a swarm, like it just went from 30 to about 150 people in the chat room. And it seemed like a posse, literally a posse of racists came to defend what happened at Penn State. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
It's what white supremacists do. Trust me, I'm not surprised. They'll do anything they can to block people from reality, to cut you off at the path. They'll do whatever they can to basically perform Jedi mind tricks so that you don't see how barbaric they really are. You have to remember, white people, their whole being and fiber, they're reared from the womb to basically believe that you are special, white little boy, white little girl. This world is yours, and you can do whatever you want to those darkies, and they have no right to question you. It is your people that tamed this land, and therefore you need to run these people. That's what they believe. That's like, I'm going to give you an example, Clash of the Titans. That was a remake, back in 2010. The remake was worse than the original movie, and at least in the original movie, they had a black guy who was the main villain, but if you really look at the story of Clash of the Titans, Andromeda and Cassiopeia and that whole land that Perseus goes into, those are all black people. So white people, they're raised to believe that they're the standard bearers of humanity and that they are the actual people who are normal, whereas black people are abnormal. And when you're faced with the reality that not only are you not normal, not only do your parents and your forefathers lie, but in reality you're the savage and you're abnormal, yes, I'm sure that they'll be blocking and tackling every chance they get.
Massive resistance. Expect massive resistance from racist man and racist woman. The person who called in from New York, with the hand up at TalkShoe. Did you have a question, comment? Your line should be open.
Hi, Gus.
Is this
Gus?
LBM?
Yes.
Greetings. We can hear you.
Greetings.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, Streetlove. This is my question. What might be some of the manifestations of the trauma as these young boys get older? What do you think might be? What are some of the ways that they may manifest what happened to them?
I can't speak for them, but just judging by statistics, they have a good chance of being gay. They have a good chance of growing up with self-doubt. They have a good chance of they've already been emasculated. It's not normal as a boy to have sex with a man. It's not normal to have sex, period, unless you're a teen. And with an individual the same sex and a man, that's not normal. So I'm sure it's haunting. I'm sure they're not going to grow up normally, but these are the devils we're dealing with. They want to do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want to black people. It's a part of white supremacy.
LBM, did that answer your question, or?
Yes, I'm good, Gus. Thanks.
You got it, ma'am.
Good to hear from you. Did you have anything else? Oh, okay, she's good. Again. Excuse me, LBM, Cree 7, they also covered this topic. They were on it much earlier. You can check out that broadcast Cree, her program, as well as her blog, cree7.wordpress.com. cree7.wordpress.com. I'm going to have to I will get another caller so I can take a break. My voice is cracking up on me. Person who called in from Texas, your line should be open. Person who called in from Texas.
Oh, hey, how y'all doing? It's Brother Jay.
Greetings,
Hello, sir.
Hello. I'm going to be as brief as possible, a few points. Earlier, I got cut off from the show, but I heard y'all talk about the Church of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard, and I wanted to know if you know about the Nation of Islam hooking up with them and praising L. Ron Hubbard, who was a racist and a Satanist, and also if you heard of Alfred Kinsey, there's a documentary out about him called Kinsey's Pedophiles. And one more thing about Professor Griff had said something about Cat Williams was talking about he got invited to these parties in these mansions, and it was blowing his mind, the things he was seeing. And I wanted to know if you heard of any of them things.
Yeah, what I said earlier about L. Ron Hubbard, he is an occultist. He was part of what if you can look it up, what was considered the Babylon working. It was this sex ritual that helped him kick off Scientology and Dianetics. He sir, I have some thoughts on the NOI that I cannot say. There are some people I respect as Muslims, but I'll put it to you like this. The NOI, they killed more black people in the Northeast around the 1970s than any KKK could ever imagine.
Oh, yeah. They took away our general, Malcolm X. But go ahead.
I mean, the people talk about Al-Qaeda. They beheaded people left and right between New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia.
Man.
But that said, yes, L. Ron Hubbard, he was an occultist. A lot of this stuff was chronicled in this book called The Black Sun, with Preston Nichols and Peter Moon wrote.
Let me say that again so I can write it down. The Black Sun.
Sure. The Black Sun trilogy. It was either a trilogy or a 4-part series of books, but the last one is Huh?
No, I said you said the Black Sun trilogy. Okay.
Yeah, with the last one being the last book was actually called The Black Sun, and it basically chronicles that about occultism and how a lot of the powerful people in Western society, they're linked to occultism. They have participated in occult activity, and he basically ends the book by saying that the occultists know that the real progenitors of Western civilization were black.
Yeah.
Like for the real sure.
Oh, go ahead. I was just saying, go ahead.
Sure. The real progenitors of our society, okay, they're black people. Like Egypt, that was basically Greek for land of the blacks. It wasn't talking about the sand as being black. It was talking about the land of the blacks. When you're talking about Western civilization, it incorporates Africa. You're basically talking about Africa and Europe, and there were a lot of black people that basically cultivated the Europe that is today. Like Charlotte in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, named after Queen Charlotte. She was a black woman. A lot of the popes, a lot of the monarchy in Europe, they were black. Right on down the line. When you talk about, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, do you know what the name Schwarzenegger translates?
Fitted.
Huh?
Fitted.
It's swarthy Negroid, basically a black man. So the very first Schwarzenegger, way, way, way back, was a black person. That's like you have this, one of Santa's helpers, a character named Swart Pete. Right. Black Pete. That a lot of black Norwegianers, Belgian people, they dress up as in early December. And you have a prominent black presence, the Black Knights, the Moorish Knights, the people that were, a lot of the ancient Britons were black people. And they weren't, some of them weren't transplants. They were indigenous and ultimately wiped out by the Caucasians who came to Europe. So the Black Sun basically ends by stating how those that bear the secrets of Western civilization's origins, they bear the knowledge that it was black people that created the society that we live in. And that's what fuels white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example. Did you ever see Batman Begins?
No, I need to check it out then.
There's a scene where basically Jonathan Crane, he's the villain, the Scarecrow. Batman gives him a whiff of his own fear toxin. When under the hallucinogenic powers of the fear toxin, Crane sees Batman as this black creature. And his voice gets lighter and he gets extremely fearful. He sees Batman as a black man. His very fear that's been revealed is that he fears black men. Look closely at the bat creature that is Batman. You'll see this black goo, this black liquid emanating from his mouth as he's talking. It's just dripping. It's like running out of his mouth. He's basically looking at Batman as literally a black phallus, just constantly cranking out black sperm. Its subtext is that, yes, these people, they fear black men, and so they want to control black men whenever possible. It feels good to them to emasculate black men.
Right. Let me bring this up real quick before I go. It's a brother on YouTube by the name of God720, and he was talking about the city of Atlanta, and he was connecting the dots between Greek mythology and homosexuality to Atlanta today. And
yes, Atlanta is named after. Yep. Atlanta's named after Atlanta.
Right, and real quick, I've learned, that to European sex is a job. That's why I always try to figure out for years why they trying to make it seem like we bad people for wanting to have sex. But when I got more conscious and started doing more studying, I see why. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you're right. They anything that creates black people, anything that creates heterosexual black people is in direct opposition to white supremacy. That is the context of why they were condemning the welfare queen, shaming black women out of having kids. That's why they want to pit black men against black women on a regular basis. That's why they want black women to be lesbians and black men to be gay. Because you eliminate black people, you neuter black people, and in reality, a lot of black gay men wish they were white women. Therefore, they wish they basically condone white supremacy.
Right.
And yes, so homosexuality is a major tool of white supremacy. Racially, as concerned to black people, it helps to ward off the creation of other black people. Now,
right, when I was watching that documentary, Kenzie's Pedophile, it was blowing my mind, the stuff I was seeing and hearing.
Yes. Oh. And you have to remember, too, white homosexuals are white supremacists. Why? Because they love white men. And they want to be considered special because they're white men. So they're not interested in a fair, equitable society because that will wipe out the clout of being a white male. So by that very nature, yes, white homosexuals are white supremacists. And it's so pronounced that I don't know if the guy touched on YouTube or not, but yes, the pride celebration. That's what the homosexuals celebrate. They're so racist that the black gays have their own Black Pride weekend. And yeah, the people in occupied Atlanta that disrespected John Lewis, even though I'm not like a arch fan. I really am not that much of a fan of John Lewis, but that's me personally. But objectively, the guy was gay, and it just goes to show you that's how little they think of black people, that you're supposed to be about righteousness and helping the so-called 99%, yet here comes a major civil rights leader, a living legend, and you don't even want him to talk to you and to talk to the demonstrators. So yes, white gays are white supremacists in practice.
And that's why I started listening to people like Malcolm X and studying Hannibal Barker. It made me want to be more of a man. But that's all I got to say, brother. Thanks very much.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Context of white supremacy. Alfred Kinsey, I think we touched on him earlier, the Big Ten connection with Penn State.
Yes, yep.
There are several documentary films that have, I don't want to say great, but have important information to know how much of an impact, destructive in my opinion, Alfred Kinsey and his work around pedophilia and sexual activity at Indiana University, the legacy of his work, in my opinion, probably a huge contributor to what happened at Penn State. A lot of these pedophile rings, Alfred Kinsey and his work in normalizing this behavior and all sorts of sexual deviance. In fact, if you want to do some research, you can check out those documentaries. Those are fantastic. We also had Dr. Judith Reisman. She's a white woman. She's done a lot of research on Dr. Alfred Kinsey. She was on the program in September of 2010. You can check that out, or you can watch the Hollywood version of all this, Kinsey. Now, that version is incredibly watered down. Just keep that in mind, incredibly watered down. Even with that, you should come away incredibly disturbed. If you have just a meager understanding of racism, white supremacy, if you just check out I think it came out in 2003, Kinsey, he's engaging in sexual intercourse with his students. He gets done engaging in sex, pedophilic relationship with one of his students. That student then begins engaging in sexual intercourse with his wife. I mean, this is the watered down version. I cannot state that enough times. You're not even getting the full force of what they were doing, recruiting pedophiles to study their behavior and the way they were abusing children. They just kind of skimmed the surface on all that. They end the Hollywood version of Kinsey with a so-called homosexual white female coming to Dr. Kinsey and saying, "Oh, You saved my life. You just don't know. You gave me the courage to go forward and be proud of who I am. And I've been with my partner. She's a white woman. We've been together for 3 years, and it's been the happiest 3 years of my life. And she gets up and she kisses him. And, I mean, he's almost Jesus. He saved this person's life. And they end the film with he and his wife. They're out in the forest, and they're just looking at the trees like, this is just a great guy who did a lot of great work. And, you know, people just didn't understand, and they just thought he was perverted and doing all this crazy research on sex. But this is a great guy who's really helped it. Nothing could be further from the truth. They should end that film with the students rioting at Penn State and going over the allegations of Jerry Sandusky. That's the way that film should be ended. Big Ten partners, Indiana and Penn State. I guess I'll share for folks if they have questions. If you called in, if you're on the talk shoe line, it's *8. If you're on the free HD line, it's *6. I emailed this report to Mr. Cisco Streetlove before the program. I posted it on my Facebook. This article came out in this past summer, August of 2011. But you've got the title of this report, Health and Human Services says children are sexual beings. Psychologists push to decriminalize pedophilia.
What?
This is you can check it out online, theblaze.com. You can view this online. It is available. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's on my Facebook page. I'll put it in the link to the chat room if folks want to read. In a push that seeks to sexualize young children while condoning homosexual experimentation among teens, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is offering up pearls of wisdom to parents on the sexuality of children. But if that were not disturbing enough, this comes at a time when groups of psychologists are allegedly pushing for the decriminalization of pedophilia. This came out in August of 2011. Your thoughts on this report, Cisco Streetlove?
That it shows how deranged a lot of people are. At this, it was true back then as it is today. A lot of people get into psychiatry, psychology, as an effort to legitimize their illegitimate, immoral behavior. But this is a part of white people, or whites. This is a part of white people. It's a part of white supremacy that needs to be dealt with. That's like you hear of the Republicans talk about, oh, we the rich people, we have a right to be rich, and oh, all hell Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was the author of Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, and some other books. She was a major occultist. Her books are filled with this ritualistic white supremacist ideology, where in her philosophy, you have a right as a white person to do whatever you want to whoever you want. End the discussion. And that's what the Republicans always trump. You hear about Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged and, oh, she's such a great woman. This woman had a warped view of democratic principles. She was from Eastern Europe. I believe she was from Russia. She was never an American citizen, but you always hear about these Republicans talking about, or she was not a Native American citizen, and you always hear about these Republicans saying that, oh, Ayn Rand had the right philosophical views that we as Republicans need to embrace. And yes, the Republican Party, the CIA, and the FBI, they are tools of white supremacy. Like you were saying about the FBI and the CIA being enablers of the pornography pedophile rings. Yes. I originally had the notion that the CIA was using the pedophile rings to lure say a lot of Soviet officials. There were one or two reports where some Soviet spies were revealed because they were caught in compromising circumstances. They were caught with gay lovers or with kids, and back in the 1980s, to be homosexual was taboo. So what the CIA would do is they would say, look here, you come to our side and we'll make sure that you have safe passage to the States. We'll probably set you up in Atlanta and you'll be okay. If you don't come to our side, we're going to tell your bosses and your handlers at the Kremlin, and you know what will happen. So we'll give you 6 minutes to mull it over. But the sexual activity is deeper than that. Mind you, the CIA, as it is established, they're not really supposed to have any domestic activities. They're supposed to have international operations, whereas anything on the domestic contiguous 48s and in the other states and territories, that's the privy of the FBI. Yet the CIA has come up in several of these investigations over the decades. A lot of people that are CIA agents, they have been found guilty of child pornography. One of the agents, Jeff Gannon. Jeff Gannon was allegedly abducted in the Midwest as part of Lawrence King's operation, which emanated from Omaha, Nebraska, and went to Washington, D.C. Jeff Gannon, years later, emerges as this. He is a journalist. He's in the White House at the press conference. He asked George W. Bush a question. Well, people were like, well, who is this guy? Jeff Gannon, he was actually a male prostitute. How he got his journalistic credentials, no one knew. The people in both Bush administrations, George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, as well as some CIA agents, have been linked to and found guilty of child pornography, child molestation.
Wow. I wanted to definitely make sure that gets highlighted when you talk about this being very well organized, very well financed, lots of very powerful white people being involved with this. Why you have a situation like what happened at Penn State where all these people seem to know about this and no charges get filed, no one loses their job. This thing just is allowed to roll on for years and years and years. You see this same pattern of FBI involvement, other police enforcement organizations being involved with Larry King. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And for those who do not know, in the late 70s to the 1980s, for most of the 1980s, Lawrence King was a black businessman. He, as it turned out, he was the president of the Franklin Credit Union. It was a credit union established in Omaha, Nebraska to cater to the minority population, and it also, they lured the account of Boys Town, which was a charitable organization for wayward youth, primarily boys, but then by the 1970s and 80s, girls. Lawrence King, he was a major Republican donor. He's a very enigmatic fellow. He sang the national anthem at the Republican convention, I believe in Dallas, in the late 80s. He was also a major pedophile, child pornographer, and child trafficker. He was using some of the kids, especially the boys in Boys Town as well as around Omaha, for sexual purposes, flying them to Washington, D.C. to have sex with other politicians and lobbyists. In the late 1980s, Lawrence King was ultimately busted. But he wasn't busted for the sex ring. He was busted for allegedly misappropriating funds at the Franklin Credit Union. What's interesting is that the credit union scandal broke at the exact same time that there was a wave of savings and loan scandals in the late 1980s. One of the most prominent was with Charles Keating. Charles Keating, he had a savings and loan that he was also doing business with several politicians, including John McCain. Another savings and loan that went under was Silverado, which was co-anchored by Neil Bush of the Bush family. And when Lawrence King went to jail, it was not for the child pornography charges, it was for misappropriating and running Franklin Credit into the ground. And the scenario was buried within the larger S&L scandals of that time. One of the insiders in Lawrence King's operation was a man named Craig Spence. Craig Spence was a former CIA agent, one of those big high-up lobbyists. He had sex with the kids. He was found around 1989 dead of an apparent suicide. There were several victims of this sex ring who've been found dead or murdered. And it's just one of those things where, yes, this is the norm when it comes to white supremacy, homosexual activity, especially targeting black boys. It's not an epidemic. It's actually the norm that we as honest people need to fight and reveal it at every turn.
Context of white supremacy again, and there's a great documentary. You can watch it online, Conspiracy of Silence. Some of the listeners, Khadijah, she shared that when this first situation at Penn State first broke, Conspiracy of Silence, and it goes into more of the details around Larry King and all these people that were involved. Some of the things Mr. Streetlove touched on in terms of people disappearing, being murdered, planes crashing. One of the investigators who was trying to get more information about this ring and was trying to actually push for prosecution ended up dying in a plane crash with his child. Just a lot of similarities to what happened with the situation at Penn State. Saw someone else called in with a hand up. I just wanted to get clarification on the book that you were telling them. Is it Black Sun Rising, the Cold Fire Trilogy? Is that the series of books by C.S. Friedman?
No, it was by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon. Because Preston Nichols, he's the, I believe he's the cousin of the Nichols that was involved in the Oklahoma City bombing. And the book, it's called The Black Sun. Preston. But if you were to type in Preston Nichols and Peter Moon, that should help.
Typing it in now. Just want to make sure I can track it down.
Got it.
I'll get it as we proceed with the program. The person who dialed in, last four digits. Again, if you have a question, if you're on the talk shoe line, it's *8. If you're on the free HD line, which is the 760 number, it's *6. If you have a question, caller 9121. Did you have a question? 9121.
Hey, this is me again, Gus Blacker. Your guest, he brought up something that reminded me of something. He was saying something about him trying to make pedophilia legal. It made me think of a group that's been in existence now for I don't know how long, for some years now, probably 20, 30 years, I don't know. I'm wondering if he's familiar with a group called I think it's called NAMBLA, and it's an acronym.
Yes, yeah.
Could you give me some thoughts on that?
Yeah. The North American Man Boy Love Association.
Yeah, that's them.
Francis Sheldon, he was an advocate of NAMBLA, and one of the curious things about the Oakland County child killings, several of the victims were left at streets with BL. There's a documentary that you may want to listen to. It's available on YouTube, courtesy of Helen Dagner, that was produced in 1977. I believe it's called Winter's Fair, the Children, the Killer. It chronicles the murders at that time. Bruce Danto, he's one of the psychiatrists that was working with the police, and he goes on, and there's this pattern. They're leaving these kids at the BL. What does that mean? There was a congressional hearing in 77. One of the participants in the larger sexual operation, he basically was advocating for boy love. That's what the BL meant. And he was telling the senators, because I believe Senator Kennedy and some other prominent senators were a part of this panel. He's elaborating on how they operate, so-called giving them insight. And apparently they did not use this insight when the Atlanta murders emerged.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
I think I was able to track down the book while Blacker was getting his question in. It's, is it The Black Sun, and that's Sun, S-U-N, The Black Sun, Montauk's Nazi?
Yes, the Montauk books, yes.
Got it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hadn't heard about it. That I see all three of them. It's, I think the Pyramids of Montauk, Explorations in Consciousness, and then Montauk Revisited, Adventures in Synchronicity.
Right. Because that goes into if your listeners are inquiring about Montauk Point on Long Island was where they did a lot of research into so-called paranormal activity. There was also there was an enclave of Germans that lived at Montauk Point, around Montauk Point, and there's always been the suspicion that some of these German-American citizens were Nazi operatives. Furthermore, during World War II, there was a Nazi submarine that was based on Montauk Point. And I think it sank, because they even covered this in one of the adult magazines, like FHM, at the around 9-10 years ago. And I got it because I think it had like Little Kim in the magazine. So I'll say that right now. I don't look at white women.
Right on. I also wanted to make sure we got in during the program, and touched on it already, the Republican Party. I'm in complete belief that the Republican Party and the so-called Democratic Party, both just, different branches in the system of white supremacy. But you said the pedophilia, this is a particular component of the so-called Republican Party. A lot of examples, Phil Hinkle this past summer, a lot of examples, I think, to illustrate. But just if you could touch on the Republican Party and their penchant for this sort of misbehavior, really.
Sure. A lot of there's some freaky people that work with the Republicans. A number of the officials, like I said earlier, that were part of both Bush administrations have been linked to child exploitation. Some adult entertainers have been associates of the Republican Party. One in particular, I don't know if you're familiar, but there was talk about Ronald Reagan. He and Nancy Reagan had this astrologer. She was actually an actress. I forget her name because I got rid of the DVD, but she was actually in this movie called Super Chick, which is basically this like one of them 70s grindhouse movies about basically this woman that's sleeping with other men in her sexual misadventures. It's just shy of a porn movie, but I think in real life she died of diabetes, but she actually was an astrologer to Ronald and Nancy Reagan. So there you have it. You have a lot of the people like Adam Starchild. He was working with several Republican senators and Congress people. He was involved in Abscam. Yes, a lot of the people in the Republican Party, until they are exposed en masse, a lot of the people in the Republican Party are child molesters, pedophiles. And with the Republicans in particular who wrap themselves up in the American flag, their whole thing is, do as I say, not as I do.
Wow, that Indiana connection, just making sure I point that out, since we had talked about Alfred Kinsey, and a caller brought that up as well, and he did a lot of his research at Indiana University. Phil Hinkle, state representative in Indiana. Connections continue. And again, the history of white people. You should not be surprised. I see someone else called in. I want to get their call. Person that died. Walking Bear. Walking Bear, your line should be open. Walking Bear.
Greetings, everybody.
Good evening.
Do you recall the TV show America's Most Wanted, John Walsh? He did a 2-hour special about these little white kid paper boys missing in the Midwest, and apparently the police and the FBI couldn't do what they could do, and that eventually a parent or a couple of parents hired a private detective, and this 2-hour special was about what this private detective discovered, and over time was mostly just by luck. Like he stopped at a truck stop, used a restroom, and there'd be like JAC was here and a certain date, and that was one of the kids' initials that had disappeared years earlier. Eventually, he had an opportunity to meet one of these children who was abducted years earlier, and this child said that, who's now like a late teens, made a comment that he was part of a pedophile ring, and what they were doing as the older children who had been conditioned, they would go and snatch other small children that were delivering papers, and I guess they used chloroform, if I'm not mistaken. And anyway, there was some remote farm where they were doing all this pornography, and apparently it was an international ring. Anyway, the private investigator couldn't go any further with it, so he turned information over to the FBI, and watching the program, this is a 2-hour special, John Walsh, the FBI returns eventually after they're doing an investigation, returns to this private investigator and says, drop your investigation. And apparently the reason was because a lot of people in high places in politics were involved with this, be it they were buying the material or actually visiting this farmhouse. Now, when I saw this, I'm thinking, okay, the evening news, ABC, NBC, CBS is all going to be on this tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening, and I didn't hear anything. I said, okay, well, I guess the show's off the air. It was as if it never took place. It was a 2-hour special, and it was amazing. But it was the FBI who made the decision to drop the investigation, and according to the program, it was because people in high places were involved with this pedophile ring.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, sir. No, I'm not. No, thank you personally for sharing that, because that confirms everything that I've researched over the years. That confirmed everything that I've heard about Atlanta, and yes, it's not the little itty bitty account executive. It's high up the chain. That these are the people that are responsible for what you elaborate on, and yeah, it's an international ring. Yes.
And I'm not sure how you would get about, unless they have DVDs of the season of America's Most Wanted. But it was a 2-hour special, which the show is usually an hour long, and he just narrated this story. And I think they may have showed the investigator. And again, it was, they just conditioned the boys that they had snatched, years earlier to snatch the smaller kids, and they
exactly.
It was
yep.
child porn. So,
yes.
Thank you very much.
That's exactly how it's operated for apparently decades. There's one case, the chicken coop murders in the L.A. area, back all the way into the 1920s, 30s, that was chronicled in that movie Changeling with Angelina Jolie.
Yes, I remember that.
There was the actual farmer who was a pedophile child killer. The police covered it up, and they presented that woman with a kid who was not her flesh and blood. Yes, these rings have been in operation, this ring has been in operation for centuries.
I came in late, but I recall, I think it was when the American government brought in a bunch of the Nazis, some of the doctors that were involved during World War II, German doctors. I know they went up into Canada, and they were using the Native American children that were in the residential schools for different things. Plus, there was also sexual assault of the children with or without the being the Nazis. But bottom line is the government was aware of it, and they're slowly but surely supposedly doing something about it now. All these survivors who are now in their 60s and 70s. But I know they were using the children as human guinea pigs, and they were some of the Nazis, and I'm sure they were still doing tests sexually on these individuals as well.
Yeah, that's like to show you that you just elaborate on the sexual deviancy, but also the overall inhumanity and as far as like genetic experimentation goes with white supremacy. On CNN, they have Out Front with Erin Burnett. Are you familiar with that show?
No, I'm not that one, no.
Okay, she came over from CNBC. It's basically like the business channel. I never forget, last year, if not around 2009, when she was on CNBC, one of the African nations, they sued a pharmaceutical. And she was elaborating, for the cameras. And she just cavalierly, casually blurted out, well, if they can't test these drugs in Africa, how are we going to know they're going to work? Who are they going to test them on? And that's how they feel about us. Or that's how they feel about non-white people.
And the thing is, that same person, if there was an investigation about human or medical testing on animals or dogs, she'd be the first one having an outcry. Going back to white people and man's best friend. So
yes,
right. So we value less than dogs because they love their dogs. I mean that literally at times.
Yes. Yes, sir. That's the big emphasis on white supremacy. It's to demean black people at every turn because it makes them feel good, and at the same time, it hides the reality that if it weren't for black people, there would be no Western civilization.
Hey, David.
Yes, sir.
That about those children, Native children up in Canada. Part of that, it was a priest up there in because the Catholic Church is behind all of that, those children getting taken from their homes, and I forgot what they call it, re-educating them, or is it, trying to make them into white people. But a documentary that touches on some of that is called A Stolen Nation. And that pastor, I think he was a priest that made it. I think his name is Bob Arnett
Kevin
or
Annett.
something.
Yeah, Kevin
Annett. What
Annett.
is it? Kevin Annett. Okay.
Kevin Annett. He was a Protestant minister who he has a documentary called Unrepentant. But yeah, he's the one to expose what was going on with the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, because they call it the Unified Churches of Canada, and it's Catholic and Protestant, and the Canadian government was part of it. And he that's where I got the information about the Nazis after World War II. I think it was Operation Paperclip or something.
Yes.
The government brought them to the States, and then they said, well, we got some guinea pigs for you, and they took them up into Canada to do their thing with the native children.
And also, when they brought those Nazis over, that was also the start of OSS, which turned into the CIA.
Yeah. According to the official story, the OSS was dismantled because Truman did not like Wild Bill Donovan. And in its place, that's how the CIA emerged.
Okay.
And I think Operation Paperclip, it was around the last things that the OSS did, if not the first things that the CIA did.
Okay.
Because I believe the CIA was formed in 1947.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when J. Edgar Hoover, like I said, J. Edgar, he put in that stipulation that they were not to work on any domestic investigations.
Right. And they're still not supposed to.
I know I've seen programs, when I say programs, like news clips where there's a bombing or something take place overseas, and I guess it's, like a U.S. embassy or something, but they'll show FBI agents involved. And I think the movie, I can't even think of the movie now, but Jamie Foxx was in it, and, they were FBI agents, not CIA or DEA, and they were supposedly in the Middle East investigating. So, even though FBI is supposed to be a domestic thing, which is only U.S. territories, somehow they have a loophole that they can go anywhere around the world, not just, Guam, which is a U.S. territory, the U.S. Virgin Islands, but I guess anywhere they freaking want to do any investigation.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that movie, wasn't the name of it The Kingdom?
That's it.
The Kingdom.
And just keeping in step with the DEA and the CIA, it seems like the FBI has expanded its territory.
One goal might be that if it's a U.S. embassy, well, that's technically U.S. territory, therefore we have right to investigate it. I have no clue, but it doesn't make a difference. They'll make the laws to fit their needs.
Yeah.
So it's irrelevant. If it makes sense,
but,
it doesn't.
I will say this, sir. You bring up a great point on how the varying degrees of separation mask the utilitarianism of the fact that it's really limbs of the same body, the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you have the Secret Service, even though you have the CIA, even though you have the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, it's basically all the government. It's just layers of bureaucracy that are seemingly supposed to give some sort of cleanliness to their operations. But that's how white supremacy acts. White supremacy is an occultic principle that maintains that white people, because of their skin color, are superior to everyone else on the planet, especially black Americans. White supremacy, just as those different government agencies have an identity, white supremacy has different arms. It has different limbs. It's the church, regardless of religion. It's in politics, regardless of party. It's in business, regardless of the enterprise or the industry. The key is to ensure that white people remain at top. And embedded within white supremacy are those that practice pedophilia as exercise in white dominance.
I totally agree. I mean, for example, and I've had this conversation several times with people in the room who are actually still practicing Catholics. When you think about it, if white supremacy, which it is, the most powerful organization on the planet, if they had a real problem with pedophilia, they would have shut down the Catholic Church a long time ago. And when you think about it, all countries around the planet that have Catholic churches, because once these scandals are exposed, you would think, okay, we're shutting down every Catholic church in Ireland, every Catholic church in South America, the continent of South America, every Catholic church, not just in Boston, but across the United States. But for some reason, the Catholic Church is allowed to continue. And again, I've used this analogy with my own mother before. I said, if there was some scandal found out that for the last 30 years in the city of Baltimore that, the public school administration, from principals to teachers to janitors were involved with some kind of pedophilia thing, they shut down the schools until they got everything cleaned up. But when it comes to Catholic Church, okay, wink and a smile. And, if we got to throw someone under the bus, we will. But if we can't, if we can get away with it, we'll just move them to another parish. And I'm sure that's what they're doing at Penn State right now. I guess the Catholic Church is probably laughing. He should have become a priest, and he wouldn't have this problem right now.
Yeah. Penn State, it stands out because it's like a major football program. But in the overall story, it's par for the course, and it's not just a pattern; it's the actual modus operandi. This is what a lot of white supremacists do to kids. As a matter of fact, the NCAA has gotten involved because Joe Paterno, he covered up a lot of the death threats that black students and the black football players were getting. And around 2001, there was a black man who was murdered just off of the campus.
Right.
And this is in the north. This is not Mississippi. This is the north.
Exactly.
For anybody who's still confused.
And remember too, when you're talking about pornography, they had a major report in the early 80s. A lot of people assumed for years that pornography, it was just heterosexual activity. That it was, men looking at women. But no, the mafia, the Jewish crime rings, they were cornering the pornography trade, and they were basically specializing in child pornography. Why? It was a lot of money to be made. You can blackmail people. One of the ways that a lot of the pornographers were busted was through using the mail. And the mafia, or these organizations that trafficked in child pornography, they had their own little Rolodex of clientele. You can imagine if you have a client who may be a prosecutor, that's a gold mine. You could do crime. You see that prosecutor, I have these mafiosos in my jurisdiction, and they did this crime, and this is going to stop right now. I'm going to lay the hammer on them. Well, Mr. Big Shot DA, the next morning, he gets a nice little package, express mailed to him with compromising pictures. All of a sudden, the public at large, they see that the case was dropped. These known mobsters, they're scot-free. And so extortion, raw power came in dealing with child pornography. And like I've said before, when you're talking about child pornography, this is the thing. These guys know that they're wrong. You understand what I'm saying? These guys are perverts. They know that they're wrong. So they're not sympathetic figures like, say, drug addicts who can go into rehab and be cleaned up, and besides using drugs, they're basically innocent citizens if they haven't committed crimes, but they're redeemable citizenry. When you're talking about those that consume child pornography, these are evildoers. They're just as sinful as the pornographers themselves. So it's a super secret ring that is coveted by both parties. And both parties, on one hand, keep things in check. Now, what was fascinating about Lawrence King's operation is that, unlike in Atlanta, and even unlike in Oakland County to a great degree, his ring is one of the first major rings that was mobster free. You had people in his institution at Boys Town and government officials that were running this ring unfettered. Whereas in Atlanta, in Oakland County, a lot of the masterminds, a lot of the muscle that was used to corral the victims, they were notorious criminals. They were notorious gangsters, or they were involved in some of the sex cults. But Lawrence King's ring, it was basically the players at his institution, Boys Town, and rogue government officials. So he was doing the blackmailing. He was doing the extortion if he wanted more power or more money. He was not being strong-armed by any mafiosos.
The business. It's business and pleasure for them. And I'm not sure who the person who made the quote, but they've said on the cows several times in the past, the whole world's a white man's brothel, so it doesn't seem to matter who it is, male, female, child, or adult.
Absolutely.
Well, yes, you're right. But this is up to us. I believe that we as a people can fight it, and we can get ourselves free of these people and basically expose them for the creeps they are. But like I said, it works with males and females, young, old, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, cousins, because these men, they pervert natural bonds. That's like all men. You have a father, but you have several mentors or other men who inspire you. You go into a profession because of your father's friend or an uncle. Your older cousin imparts knowledge. These pedophiles, they pervert natural relationships. And yeah, they need to be eradicated from our reality as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed.
Amen. I wanted to make sure I got in number one. We have about 30 minutes left, so if you think you have a question or a comment, you should get your hand up now. If you want to dial in, the number is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. If you dial that number and you have a question, just press *6. If you are on the talk show line and you have a question, press *8. You should try to get your hand up soon. I don't want to do people waiting until the last minute if they have something that they want to add to the conversation. I just wanted to make sure I got in. Number one, we'll be back tomorrow, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. That would be Saturday, November the 26th. Our guest, Mr. Marcus McGee, he is the author of it's a collection of essays titled On Niggers and Squirrels. I'll just leave it there. Very interesting. He is a black male. Very interesting book, but titled On Niggers and Squirrels. I wanted to make sure we got in for the program just to make sure that we understand the connection between white supremacy and homosexual behavior, and to point out, pay attention in the news. They are not calling Jerry Sandusky a homosexual. They're pointing out he's married his wife Dorothy. They're not calling him a homosexual, even though this is a male engaged in so-called sexual activity with another male. They are not calling him a homosexual. Very important to pay attention to that. Trying to make sure that they don't want to taint or mar your perception of so-called homosexual activity. As I said before, queer, to ruin, to damage. That's what the word means in its verb form. Queer. They are queering black people with homosexual activity. I wanted you to, Mr. Streetlove, if you could share, when I lived in the city of Atlanta, I thought of Atlanta and the state of Georgia as, major area of overt, proud, racist white supremacists. The city of Atlanta has a very high population of black people and a astronomical population of gay, so-called gay, homosexual black people. Can you kind of make that connection? Because in my opinion, and I felt this even when I was confused about racism when I lived in that area, that epidemic population of black so-called homosexuals, that is the power of the white supremacist program in full effect. Can you kind of comment on that?
Yes, sir. Atlanta sits in Fulton County, but some of it bleeds into DeKalb County. And between Atlanta and DeKalb County, you have DeKalb is the natural suburb to the city of Atlanta. Moreland Avenue will take you from South DeKalb to downtown Atlanta. Ponce de Leon Avenue will take you from the city of Decatur into Midtown, or just outside of Midtown in downtown. And North Druid Hills will take you from North DeKalb, North Decatur, right into Buckhead. Because Atlanta is a primary white-collar service sector city, it's very easy for the gay population to thrive there. And between Atlanta, especially East Atlanta and DeKalb County, 35 to 40% of the adult populace is gay. It is no thing to see visibly gay couples, to see transvestites, to see lesbians between East Atlanta and DeKalb County. When you go to the stores, you'll see whatever store, whether it's a fast food place or a discount chain, the health food store, a district like Buckhead or Little 5 Points, you will see gay people en masse.
Please let me. Can I add something, sir?
Sure.
I work and live in Atlanta, well, outside of Atlanta, and I can tell you, the amount of gay activity going on here is just, and I don't even hang out, so what I see, I see it at work. The amount of gay activity going on here is just, it's almost like it was planned, and what I'm seeing now more so than anything is young girls. I mean, we're into the holiday season at work, and we hire a lot of temps. They hire a lot of temps. They hire a lot of temps, and it's one shift where I would say 75% of the young girls, I mean 18 and up, young black girls are lesbian. And I'm thinking it's something in the water or something in the air or something that's turning these people this way. I'm just at a loss to understand or explain it. I mean, everybody's just amazed at all these gay young girls.
one of the things with the homosexual population, especially in America, it targets black people. Why? Black people have a different physiology from whites in a lot of sense. A lot of black people, males, females, young and old, our torsos are smaller than white people's, so our limbs are longer, even regardless of our height. We're long-limbed people. Some men have lighter voices. Some women have deeper voices. Some women will have, black women will have big hands, or, some guys say big, sexy hands. White supremacists will take these facts about black Americans, and in the supremacist mindset, they'll say, see, your voice is lighter, and you have feminine features as a guy. Why can't you love me and be gay? And in turn, they'll say to black women, why can't you be a lesbian? You were made to be a man. And another thing with racism, with white supremacy, they play off of black features. So black women that are darker, that don't look like white women, they're cast as being ugly. Black women who are bigger, because of black people are history. Black women who are physically bigger than white men, they are hell-bent on portraying them as lesbians. Because you're so big and because you could take me in the tussle, God didn't make you as a woman. He should have made you as a man, like you should be. And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of black people fall into. Now, mind you, the same white people that do that, in this day and time, you can't have white women act black enough. Whether they're tanning their skin, whether they're getting collagen injections. Hello? Whether they're getting injections for... Oh, can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Your volume dropped a little. Oh, okay. You're good.
Is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize for that. But whether, black, they always try to copy black women's looks, the way black women act. They always want to borrow the term sister girl. That's what I was talking to Gus about earlier. In addition to white people appropriating normalcy, they also find the time to appropriate whatever black people do, and if it's popular, take the credit for it. So music, they always want to put a white face on jazz, R&B, hip-hop. They always want to, in the 1970s, it was popular for black women to wear nose rings. You can't get nose rings out of white people now. And in the fashion industry, a lot of white women, they want to look as black as possible. So in trying to beat down a people who they in reality are jealous of, it is in their whole goal to dehumanize and disrespect black people as much as possible. And the whole goal is to promote homosexuality because it fosters less breeding, and at the same time it makes black women ugly, and it emasculates, depowers black men.
Well, I just saw it's something that that just started here. Well, I don't know if it just started. I just seen it, and I can't even remember what the trend is called now. But it's supposedly straight black men or younger teens starting to do things that women would do, like wear lipstick and nail polish and all that kind of carrying on. But they're supposedly straight, and it's called something, and I can't remember what it is. And I'm thinking this stuff is all just being programmed. I'm thinking it's being dictated to
it is.
television, BET, or somewhere.
Center for Disease Control.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if you look at hip hop alone, yeah, there's definitely a homosexual tinge to hip hop. For example, with hip hop, one of the things that lured a lot of kids in the 80s and 90s, they saw a lot of these black guys who were strong. They looked like they were virile, and they looked like they could handle their business.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, a lot of these guys were gay. A lot of the men that not all of the men in penitentiaries, but a lot of the men, they're homosexuals. So when they come out of prison, they feast on younger men, and the women in turn twist the heads of ignorant girls.
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I had a black female that I'm friends with and used to work with. In her past, she used to work as a prison guard here in the state of Virginia. And what she said to me, which is probably close to 10 years ago, it floored me. It disturbed me very much. But anyway, she said her observations: a man in prison, after about a year and a half, starts looking at other men for favors, and she was referring to oral sex.
Yes.
By the time they've been in there for 3 years, they're deep in the game. And as soon as she said that, it just made me think: are men that weak? And then she mentioned in the state of Virginia, at least at that time frame, there were no condoms in prison. So men are doing things to other men, and of course they're, like you said, the facade that they're not gay. They're still have communication with their wives outside the prison. So that means when they get out of prison, because they eventually will get out, they're going to be with their wives and girlfriends and talking about spreading disease. So the year and a half to 3 years disturbed me, probably the most. Just psychologically just messed me up. But then she said from her observation, after a year and a half, men look to other men for favors, and then eventually, 3 years, she said they just stay in the game. And she eventually stopped doing that and became in the medical field. And she said she had some supplies that needed to come in. When it had come in, and she asked this guy that's known homosexual and very flamboyant, hey, can you help me with these things? And she said he snaps his fingers, kind of like, I guess, in Living Color when they 3 snaps and a twist kind of thing. And she said men were just falling out of the skies. What you need, brother? What you need? What you need? Oh, saying hello to her, and where do you need these plates? And he was just telling where to go, and pick up these boxes. She needs this, and she was telling where to go. But she said that, don't forget me, brother. Don't forget me. These are quote unquote hard men, all up on this homosexual, because apparently, at least in the state of Virginia, they did, and I think maybe nationally, they did start cracking down on prison rape. So again, hey, don't forget me. I'm helping you out. You asked me to pick up these boxes. You don't forget me, in the future. And again, talking about anti-sexual behavior, talking about a society or white supremacy, using prison and homosexuality as a form of birth control.
Right.
It's madness.
I call it genocide.
Yes, I'm not. No, I'm not surprised. One cousin of mine was a prison guard. And, he said how some Bloods raped the dude up in Jersey, and that's what they do. The whole goal of white supremacy is to cast black people as subhuman and savage as possible. They have many vessels to do it. They do it by putting people in prison and breaking them, like Jim DeMint said about President Obama. They expressly attempt to put black people and keep black people in poverty. Again, just like with down here in the sex rings, that the sexual operations that go on to this day. What better way to keep people shackled than to always have them looking for money? And when you break down a person for so long, they'll do anything for money. And so they're interested in having black women and black males in prostitution. That's like if you really look at the commercials. And you can do this, anyone can do this yourself, hearing my voice. Look at the commercials very closely. Look how they have black people always in the so-called menial jobs, even as security people, as TSA agents in commercials. But look who they always have playing the accountants. Look who they always have playing the medical people, the IT people. If they're not white, they're Asian.
Right.
So they're very smooth at what they do. They're hell-bent on making black people look as dumb and ghoulish as possible.
Excuse me, Mr. Kreslove, I'd like to change gears for a second, just for 1 second, and see if you can help me out on this one also. With the Eddie Long thing here in Atlanta that broke earlier this year. It's been long rumored that he's been gay, and I think everybody in his congregation knows it to some extent. Why is it that they still line up to go? He has 3 services on Sunday, and all of them are packed. I went right after the scandal broke. I went to the church and I sat in the parking lot, and I was going to see if it was going to have mass exodus. But these people still line up to go and see this man that they know is not preaching anything, not practicing anything that he's preaching, and possibly gay, and possibly a pedophile. Why did they still go in droves to this? What are we looking for in church?
Sir,
what are they looking for in church?
You know, if it weren't so tragic, I'd be laughing, and I would have to hang up the phone in laughter, because I saw that coming. There was talk years ago. People knew that he was gay all along, and yeah, he is a pedophile. He had sex with those guys when they were minors. And that show that he did, I have 5 rocks, I'm going to fight this. Well, if you aren't gay, why is it that you settled out of court? And then, when they say something, I want my money back.
It's ridiculous.
What can you say? What can you say? I wish the sisters would wake up, because again, I really, really love black women. And
me too.
The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. And when black women in mass rise up and, take their throne, that's going to help. That's going to be a big part of the assistance that we need.
Rejecting any.
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of black women, they see in Jesus what we would see in ISIS. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
And they want to see the positive of a pseudo-Superman in action. And the ministers have played on that. And when it's revealed that these ministers they're not just men, they're gay men, the sisters have the same cognitive dissonance that a lot of men have with this case in Penn State. Because, like I said, we're talking about football, and Jerry Sandusky, he looks like he's a pretty big guy. And how that guy, given the archetypes, he didn't appear to be gay, but there's overwhelming evidence this guy's a pedophile.
But what is it about a gay pastor that would have black women still going to listen to anything he has to say? It would be null and void after that, even if it ain't true. I'm going to step back and wait and see what the results are. And if it pans out that it's not true, well, then we'll come back. But they never listen.
All I could say, I think all we can say as men is, boy, I wish we had the power that minister had. Boy, you would have women all across town and a whole bunch of kids. I wish I had a fraction of that power that these ministers have sway over a lot of the black women.
It was.
You asked that question, Blacka. It was kind of like, how come they're not, exiting the church in droves after the scandal came out on Eddie Long? But I had that same question how come black people still go to church after they know that, wait a minute, my slave master gave me this religion. My slave master is still an evil person. But black people still in droves go to church on Sunday. Regardless if it's a black minister or a white minister, they still go into a white Jesus to pray to.
Black people, we as a people, here as a unit, as black Americans in Africa, Latin America, black people are communal. And black people, we are a loving people to a fault. And unfortunately, we'll do whatever we can, whenever we can, to show people, see, we're good. We go along to get along. And in our collective ignorance of trying to associate with others to get along and prove our humanity, all we're really doing collectively is showing how docile we are to evildoers.
Would that even allow for us to turn off our children to people like Sandusky to do whatever he wants to do and then let the chips fall where they may afterwards?
All I can say is that with my son, he'd be a dead man. But I never would have allowed if I had a son, I never would allow him to go to Penn State anyway.
No.
Because you're asking for trouble if you go to some remote college and university.
I think that's the same thing. Weren't most of those children from households that they were having problems? Therefore, the system or maybe a private enterprise was going to take care of these kids. And it goes back to foster care. And yesterday I spoke when Dr. Wilson was on about cases up in South Dakota where most of the kids in foster care are Native American children, and there's always cases of child, sexual assaults and or rapes. And the thing is, again, in South Dakota, for example, you got people freezing to death on a reservation. Well, that's a good excuse for the system to say, hey, you're not taking care of your child because it's too cold in here. We're going to put your child in foster care. Who benefits from foster care? It's a white person, and that white person is going to get a paycheck bigger than what the mother would get or father would get for that child. The same things happen in Canada because I followed the program with the natives up there, and I think they give, like, say, the biological parent, say, $500 per household, but if the child's in foster care, which is going to be a white person, they get twice that, $1,200 to take care of that child. So again, it's set up for you not to be the parent, and it goes back to 50 years ago or 100 years ago when they were taking children out of the Indian family reservations or villages and taking them off to these boarding schools. And going back to that prison thing, it's you're talking about the prison rapes. Isn't that like slavery when they were doing the buck breaking?
Yeah.
That's the guy who's hard. So nothing has changed other than
they're hell bent on en masse. They'll let one or two get ahead, but en masse, they do not want black Americans and indigenous people between United States and Canada to basically be prosperous as communities because, like I said, we're dealing with evildoers, and they're paranoid. They're not of sound mind and body, okay? And they feel like if those people were ever to get power, they'll do to us what we did to them. Right. That's one of the overriding impulses in white supremacist minds. So you can't win with these people because they know that they owe you. They know that they've done you and your ancestors wrong. But because they've done you and your people wrong, they feel like you're going to do them wrong, and so they have to do you in before you get to them.
That's like the wolf by the ears. You know,
yeah.
If I let go of this wolf, I'm in trouble. So I got to keep holding on to this wolf.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, but you know, it's more than just the U.S. and Canada. You know, they did the exact same thing. It may have been even the same program they did down in Australia with the Aboriginal children. There, they stripped all those children.
Yes, those are black people.
Yeah.
I'm not an Afrocentrist because we are not white people. There are black people, even of different sub-classifications, sub-races. There are black people all over the world. And if you really dig into the history of Europe, you'll find that there were indigenous Negroid people who were there. And so the whole goal with white supremacy is to dominate and systematically eradicate as much Negroid people as possible. If they can't dominate them, they will make Negroid black peoples of the planet look as subhuman, savage, and as goofy as possible.
Also, on the continent of Australia, there are actually people who look like black people, meaning African features, hair texture. It's a certain part of Australia where they look like the people of Papua New Guinea. You know, usually we think of Aboriginal people, they have curly, white people style hair, and they have a certain facial look. But they actually do have people who you would say that person has African ancestry, and they don't have the hair texture of white people and other non-white people on the planet. They actually have black people style hair.
Exactly.
That's about Australia.
That's like even in Hawaii. You look at some of the native Hawaiians and throughout Polynesia. They're more Negroid than they are as we view Asians.
Right.
And some black people, if they were to go over there, they will fall right in line with those people. They will be mistaken for those people. So, yes, there are Negroid black people all over the world. White supremacists know that, and that's why it is in their goal to make black people look as inhuman as possible.
We're at the 3-hour mark. I just wanted to get in because I think this relates to what you all have kind of been talking about, and then we can kind of wrap up unless somebody has anything they want to get in really quick before we wrap up. Just in terms of what you touched on in terms of both why black people in droves continue to support Eddie Long after that whole scandal was revealed, as well as what would happen, if this happens again the next time, Jerry Sandusky and the next ring where black children are being sexually molested by white people. I think it's because white people have been very successful at getting us to accept their sadistic and psychotic deviant behaviors. When you all were talking about Atlanta and a lot of the homosexual activity in that area of the world, Center for Disease Control is there. I don't want people to minimize that at all. Center for Disease Control headquarters is in Atlanta, and that is something that should be in the forefront of black people's minds. But Tyler Perry's headquarters is also there.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that is huge.
And I stay away from him like the plague.
Yes.
That is huge. I mean, that has a big impact. Just those two entities right there could go a long way to explaining the behaviors that you see black people exhibiting in that area of the world. And I know I mentioned it yesterday. I posted it on Facebook. I didn't find it. A listener sent it in. If she wants me to give her name out, I will gladly do so. But she mailed it to me. That movie, The Strangeness of the Johnsons, where you have a film made by a white man. Make sure I get that in as well. Made by a white man, directed, written by a white man, and he actually pops in the film for a second, a la Quentin Tarantino in Pulp Fiction. But exactly what you said, making us look as vile and despicable as possible, and normalizing that sort of behavior, so we get accustomed to it. We don't even have a shock response or being reviled or repulsed by that. We just think that this is normal and entertaining. I think that right there opens the door to black people not really being that put off by what happened with Jerry Sandusky. It really sets the stage for that sort of thing to continue, and for it to be easier for white people to continue to molest us just in that manner. And again, for folks who haven't seen that film, it is online. I posted it on my Facebook page. You have a black attempted family, so-called family, where the black son and the black father are engaged in a deviant, pedophilic relationship, sexual relationship. The black mother walks in, catches the father and son engaged in sexual intercourse on the son's wedding day. The son, he ultimately punishes the father, violently sodomizes him, and the mom just watches television and turns the volume up to drown this out. And then there's a brawl. This is how the film climaxes, with a huge violent brawl between the black son and his black mother. And if you all want to compare it to something, if you can kind of imagine the fight in They Live between the black male and the white male when he's trying to make him put on the glasses, that's about how bad it is. This brawl between black mother and her black son, where the son tries to throw the mom in the fire pit. That's the strangeness of the and exactly what you said earlier. Johnsons, again, frequently a term used to reference the penis. Just thinking of black people as penises, sexual objects that can be abused. I think that film, an especially vile example, but I think Tyler Perry, they're doing overdrive on really making these sorts of behaviors and sexual deviance acceptable to us, to make it easier for them to molest us whenever they feel like, blindside us, adopting children, Terry Kelleher, go in, snatch the black children up and do whatever they want, and to make it easier to practice white supremacy. We will be so confused and out in left field, we'll accept anything. Eddie Long, you can come and rape all of our children, and we barely bat an eyelash to make it easier for them to maintain their system. Just if you want to share any comments on that before we close out, unless anybody had anything quick they wanted to get to, Mr. Streetlove.
Oh no, hey, I thank you for the time and your guests and the callers, and I just hope I was a benefit and not a detriment.
Yes, sir.
Gus, can I say something real quick?
Yes, sir.
To me, it sounds like, with the foster care, this program, 2 Mile or whatever it was called, it seems like almost like if you have a pet dog or cat and it has babies, you as the owner of that dog gets to decide when, it's not that the mother says, okay, I'm done with being a mother to these puppies or these kittens. It's the owner of it. And that's kind of like what white supremacy is when it comes to black children and other non-white children, and sometimes even white children. It's like, okay, you're not being a good enough parent, so we're going to take your child away. And then they put the child into a worse environment than they would have ever been, in the biological parent's hands when it comes to, pedophilia or something like that. And it's kind of like, you don't see your pet dog or your pet cat freak out because you're taking the kittens away or your puppies away. And for the most part, we as human beings, H-U-E beings, we don't freak out when they take our children away. Hopefully we're not thinking, I guess maybe we're not thinking the worst thing could happen, but the bottom line is we trust these white people. We trust, this Jesus-like person who looks like Jesus, at least the one we've been told looks like Jesus. well, we trust them, and maybe the child will go to a better home, and then no, it gets molested by, some animal.
But you said it, though, they appropriate godlike mentality because, again, in the who were both white versions of Osiris, who is black. And so, by appropriating a godly aspect, they feel like they can dominate the black peoples of this planet.
Hey, Gus, can I say one thing real quick?
Make it quick.
Real quick. For anybody who wants to get some insight into what's going on in the Catholic Church and the pedophilia there, it's a book, a free download. The book is called Lucifer's Lodge. Just Google it, and you'll find that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Groovy. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I hope it was constructive. I'm sure there'll be more to add because it seems like there's new information from the Penn State case coming out every day. So I'm sure there'll be more to share on this subject matter. Thank you, everybody that called in. Blacker, LBM, Walking Bear, victim in Texas. I don't remember his handle, but thank you, everybody that called in, all the folks that listened in. I hope the information was constructive. Again, Mr. Cisco Streetlove, his book, Yesterday's Shame, should be coming out soon, updating the material just to touch on the fact that this is a massive, well-oiled, well-financed organization about white people molesting and abusing children. Again, I hope this will further reinforce the connection between white supremacy and homosexuality. We should not support this at all. Nothing about this is constructive for black people, non-white people. Also, Kevin Annette, he's been a guest on this program as well. I'm touching on his work. When he was on the program, he talked about that, white people having a ball abusing non-white children in Canada. Same thing as we started the program. This is the history of white people. Expect nothing different. We will be back tomorrow. That would be Saturday, November 26th. Program time will be 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll be discussing the book on niggers and squirrels. Looking forward to the broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Thank you to Mr. Cisco Streetlove. Thoroughly enjoyed the information, sir.
Thank you, sir. You have a great weekend.
I'm going to try my best. You do the same. Cal signing out. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. We'll be back soon.